occasionally, despite all your best efforts, someone will take a wrong turn or, miss something or keep going or whatever it is. We've definitely had our share of that. I think
Sure.
any guide service in the world is going to have that at some point.
Well, we're out doing adventures, right? That's what makes it an adventure.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Kirsten, for joining us today from Rim Tours. We are honored to have you guys on. You guys are one of the uh, oldest mountain biking tour company probably in the world, I would say.
Yep.
But definitely in Moab, where it's the mecca for mountain biking. You probably have so many great experiences and stories, and I'm excited to jump in and talk and learn more about Rim Tours today. Thank you for being on.
Sure. I'm glad to be here.
So you guys started in 1985, is that correct?
It is. I was not involved in the founding of Rim Tours. It was started by a man named John Grew, who, basically on his own decided to start a mountain bike touring company with the aim of providing a guided and supported trip. And he started with just doing the White Rim Trail in Canyonlands National Park. And he kind of modeled it after he had been a river guide in Moab. And so doing, downriver trips where you have a boat that carries everything, and then you pull off to a beach and the guides like set up a camp and cook food for everybody. And, so that was really the model that he used. He's like, so this will work for biking, and I'm really into biking. So he got that started and, fairly quickly expanded, the repertoire to do some other trips, also mainly in Canyonlands National Park and also around the greater Moab area. But after just a few years, he realized that he did not want to grow a business. And so he pretty much walked away from it. And the the Groff brothers, who had started Rim Cyclery, like 2 years before Rim Tours, they thought, this seems like a good business that, has some legs. So we're just going to keep it going. So they did that for
Got
a
it.
couple of years and just hired people to manage it for 2 years running. And it was during the spring of 1990 that both myself and my business partner, Matt Hubbard, both started working as guides for the company. And that fall, the guy who had been managing it wasn't really working out. And we thought, we could probably do this. And the Bill and Robin were like, this sounds great, but actually, why don't you guys become partners with us? Because we think like someone really needs to have a vested interest in this company to bring it along. And so for
Sure.
us, it was an awesome opportunity to kind of get in, very much at the ground level. And we were partners with them for a few years, but we bought them out in 94. So it's like since then it's just been Matt and myself, and then our awesome crew of guides and employees. And we've just been doing it ever since. So I kind of, we got on board in year 5. And but now for us it's like we're in our 31st year of doing this. So
That's
it's
amazing.
amazing to me. I'm like, how is it possible that much time has gone by?
Well, you've accrued a lot of miles over the years.
Yes.
When you're guiding, what's an average year for you in terms of miles? Or have you kept track of some of your big years? Or number of
Oh
days
God,
riding?
I am not a numbers person. I just don't care that much about numbers, and I don't retain them. So I have no idea. People ask
You're
me
all about the
numbers
fun.
all the time, and I'm like, sorry. Even if I looked at a list of numbers the day before, I probably can't digest them enough to like pass them on. So I'm just one of those people who just has never really cared that much. At the time, sure, it's nice to know I just went out and rode 25 miles, but I rarely remember it later. So sorry.
No, that's actually kind of refreshing. Sometimes the ride, the analysis and the elevation gain and the miles ridden and the amount of time you did it in, I
Hmm.
find get in the way of the fun.
Yeah,
And on Strava, I would love it if there was a meter that told you like how much fun did you have on this ride today? Because I think that is an important factor of the experience that gets lost in like the over analytical, overachieving experience that is, on most of these apps.
completely. I totally agree. And I've just yeah, I'm way more about just the fun and the couple times I'm like, I should pay more attention to this stuff. And then I'm like, why? It just doesn't matter to me. So,
Yeah, and
but I
that
do
was my
know it's very important to a lot of other people. So we do try to provide that information. I've been in many conversations with people over the years where they're like, how many feet of climbing are we going to do? I'm like, it really doesn't matter. Like, yes, it does. I'm like, okay, all right, okay.
we'll get you the details. Yeah, I think planning, trip planning, and I feel like that's where guiding really comes in and becomes helpful. And I've been led by a couple of friends on rides, and I'm really excited to take one of your tours one day because you just get to show up and follow someone that's got everything taken care of, right? Like they know the route, they know where the water is going to be, what to expect, and
Yeah.
that's really cool thing that you guys are able to create and provide to the users. Where, mountain bike rides otherwise can turn into constantly pulling your phone out and checking to see which direction you need to go on a trail and some of these networks if you're new to them. And I think guiding is a way to just kind of relax, enjoy the ride, and have a guide show you around and kind of let you know what to expect. There's some drops coming up, but there's a big climb coming up, uh, and that's really cool about tours.
No, it is. And it's been really interesting, for me to see the industry evolve because, definitely in the early days, our clients were mostly people that they did it themselves, and just to even come to Moab and decide to go on a mountain bike tour in Canyonlands was like a big deal because it's like a lot of folks would want to do everything themselves. But it was the people that realized I can't do this by myself. The equipment, the truck, everything needed is like, isn't going to work for me. And so the guide service all of a sudden became, an important, you know, part of that.
Yeah,
And then for a long time though, I think the idea of hiring a guide for mountain biking, because it was a very do-it-yourself culture, it took a while. But
sure.
as mountain biking became more mainstream and it's just changed over time. It became more mainstream, but also people realized that their time and energy is valuable to them. And there's a point where rather than do all the research and figure it out on my own, why don't I just hire somebody to take me out and show me, the best lines, or so I don't get lost, and to, direct me to the best trail for my ability. And that's really what we try to specialize in, is working with the individual to make sure that they have a great experience. Because we talk a lot of people off of doing like super hard trips once we realize you're going to be miserable. This is, or
Yeah,
you do not have the skills for this. And, take the whole enchilada, for example, which is, this very world famous epic ride in Moab. And we'll get folks who's like, I want to do the whole enchilada. Buddy told me about it. It's like, how much riding do you do? Well, I really don't ride. Okay, that's the worst ride that you should go on. But it's all
yeah,
downhill. How hard could it be? And as soon as they say that kind of stuff, like, you really shouldn't be on, on this ride.
yeah. If anybody thinks the whole enchilada is all downhill and easy, man, they're
Right.
in for a surprise.
If you look at the graph, yes, globally, you start high and you end low, but in between,
Yeah, that
it's
grind at 11,000 feet, that first climb, there should be a
it's
bailout right after that. Like,
exactly.
that's
So
funny.
anyway, we're really all about, we have so many fantastic trails around here, and in a lot of the places that we go to for multi-day trips, that we know we can provide people with a good experience. We just need to work with them to figure out which what that is.
Sure.
And I think
And
a
you
lot of
guys
people,
have, no, go ahead.
sorry. Oh, a lot of people just, really appreciate that. And like I was saying before, like their time's valuable and they maybe only have one day to ride, or they've got, only, I've always thought of it as this way, like a lot of people only have 2 weeks of vacation a year. And if they're choosing to spend 1 week of that with us, like that's a huge responsibility because you want to make it like the best week of their whole year.
Yeah,
So
I
we look at
imagine
it
it
that.
is based on your amazing reviews. And I bet for a lot of people, this is a once in a lifetime experience and it's something they hold on to for their entire life. And especially the multi-day trips.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys have day tours, multi-day tours, and several different locations. What
Mhm.
are the different locations that you offer tours in? And are those seasonal or are they running all the time and you have multiple locations? How does that work?
So yeah, really, all of our locations are fairly seasonal. We're based in Moab, Utah, and our multi-day trips here really only happen in the spring and the fall because it gets quite hot in the summer and a lot of days will be 100 degrees or more.
Right.
But we are still able to do a really strong day tour business in Moab, even throughout the summer, just by going out early in the morning and being done by riding by like 10:30, 11, and people could, still had a great experience. And then they can go off and go on the river or go up into the mountains or, hang out at the pool, whatever they're going to do when it's
Right.
really hot. So during those summer months is when we head to, typically we do some trips in Colorado, out of Crested Butte and out of Durango, up in the mountains around those communities, and run some trips there, as well as other higher elevation places like southwestern Utah, in between like the Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park areas. There's some fantastic riding in between that's, between like 7,000 and 9,000 feet. So
Right.
it's cooler temperatures and great riding.
Okay.
As
So do
well
you
as
start
not
off out of Bryce and then finish down in Zion on one of those trips?
actually, we don't do that as a point to point ride. What we do is we just focus on, it's billed as a single track trip, and there really isn't single track trails that link that whole route. So we spend time on different trail systems, excuse me, between each, we spend time on different trail systems that are between each of those two parks. And, depending on the group and what we're doing, we used to go into the parks, but honestly, the national parks have just become like such a zoo that it really detracts from the more, remote like experience that people are really looking for. A lot of mountain bikers,
Yeah.
that's what they want. They want to get away from that all. So we just tell folks, go to the parks on your own before or after the trip, and we're just going to concentrate on the good riding in between.
Yeah,
So
absolutely agree. I think we're all seeking the solace in these natural places, but there's just so many of us trying to do that at the same time that the experience has definitely changed in the national parks
that is very
and
true.
across the country. So I think the national monuments are some of the more hidden places that are almost as beautiful that are right around the corner or just outside the park is where we spend most of our time. Uh, and, that's great because we save the national parks maybe for like totally off season where it's maybe miserable or cold or doing the narrows in the middle of the winter and that's how we try to find our solace.
That sounds cold.
So
um,
what are some of your favorite trips personally that you like either going on or uh, that most of your users come for in Moab, the multi-day tours?
well, I mean, I guess if you're going to talk Moab specifically, so I mentioned Canyonlands National Park, and that's definitely a very popular um, destination for, for folks. And we've been doing both the White Rim Trail, which is the one most people have heard of, And that's a wonderful trip. I'll never get sick of that. But the Maze is another district of Canyonlands, and which is made up of three districts that are all separated by the Green and the Colorado rivers, which actually come
Right.
together in the middle of the park and then continue on just as the Colorado. So the White Rim is in the Island in the Sky district in the very north, like the top of the Y. And then the Maze is on the southwestern side of things. And then the Needles is the third district on the southeastern side of things. So the Maze is one of the most remote places in the country that you can actually drive into with a four-wheel drive and ride your bike in a national park and just get so far away from civilization, because it takes a while to get there. And the park actually limits the numbers that go in there much more restrictively than the other districts. And so that trip is one of my all-time favorites because of that remoteness. You
Yeah.
rarely see anyone else, and there's some incredible hiking to be done in there. And so on our 5-day trip, we spend one day of hiking down into this literal maze of canyons, which gives it its name. And we get to
Oh,
see
that's super cool.
some ancient rock art down there, and just really like remove yourself even more because
Yeah,
then
you're
you're
unplugged to begin with, and then you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper.
exactly.
I
So
can see how you like that the most.
yeah, so that's really one of my all-time favorite trips. Another trip that's not in Moab that I just love to death is one of the trips we do out of Durango, and it's part of the Colorado Trail from just south of Silverton back to Durango on the Colorado Trail. And it's the highest elevation trip that we do.
Okay.
And we spend 3 of the days really between 10 and 12,000 feet. And
Wow.
so it's not for everybody, but
Right.
if you like spending time at that really high alpine, above tree line, quite a bit of it, it's just fantastic. The views are incredible. The riding's amazing. It's just a really nicely well-maintained trail. And um, that's another one of my favorites. Pretty narrow window of the season that we can even do that trip, but
Sure.
it's
Are there any hot springs along the way? Because I know Uray, Silverton area has some.
no, not that high up,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty high up for hot water
Yeah,
to be.
you have to drop way down
Okay.
to get to the thing. So,
That's for someone
but
that really likes to suffer in
over,
elevation.
yeah, after the trip's over, there's some hot springs, just outside of Durango, or if you get over to the other drainage by like Rico and that area, there's some more over there. So, yeah,
Okay.
that's another
Amazing.
great one. All the places we go, I really love. I kind of didn't finish, but we also um, do some trips like also in southwestern Utah in the spring and fall, like Gooseberry Mesa area, like not too far outside of St. George and Hurricane.
Okay.
Um, and then the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, which is in Arizona, is another summertime trip that we do. Again, higher elevation between like 7 and 9,000 feet. And you're not in the park, you're in the national forest that kind of borders
Okay.
the park. So a lot of the trip that we do there along the North Rim is like you can walk up to the rim, and if you stepped off, you'd be in the park. But like the rim is the literal boundary of the
The
forest and the
edge of the
park.
park.
Yeah.
And is that a point to point trip? I see that's like a 4 to 5 day trip. That seems so exciting because we've always wanted to
Yeah,
go to the Grand Canyon Explorer.
it
Uh,
is. It's kind of both. We do kind of point to point to our last camp, and then we spend 2 days there exploring what's called the Rainbow Rim Trail. So we usually
okay.
spend like 2 nights at one camp and then 1 or 2 nights at different camps getting there.
Got it.
So
So
that's
on the
another.
multi-day trips, what could one expect? Like what is the level of support and what does one need to pack and bring versus what Rim Tours can provide for you? Or is that vary by person?
Yeah. So most of our trips are like true backcountry camping trips. And that's because there is no lodging where we're going. Like the The lodging option doesn't exist. And so we have either like two scenarios. One is, which we use like in Canyonlands and a lot of our springtime trips, is we have this big 4-wheel drive truck that carries everything we need for up to 6 days. And so that's like all of our water, all of our food, all of everyone's personal gear, all of our, group camping gear and beverages and ice to keep things cold, and, the stoves and the repair kits and everything. And
Wow.
so in that scenario, everything's on the truck. You've got 2 or 3 guides that are, you know, both showing you a fantastic time out on the trail, but once you get to camp, they like set up camp and they cook, really good, fresh, wholesome, high energy type food for you. And people are always blown away by the quality. I think they're just expecting that we're going to be opening a lot of cans or something, but
You're right.
it's not like that at all. And people are allowed to bring their own beer or wine or alcohol if you'd like. We can keep things cold in the coolers that we use. So the guides really take care of you. It's catered, to the point where you just really have to set up your own personal tent and little scene, and then we pretty much take care of the rest of it. We'll bring, comfortable chairs to hang out in. There's always hiking opportunities from camp if you want to go explore a little bit more. The guides are great storytellers. Some of our trips, we can't have campfires, but a lot of them we can. So, there can be like a group, situation around the campfire. Definitely last year with COVID, it kind of changed a lot of our protocols, but
Sure.
we've really managed to work out a very comfortable situation for people that, since we're outdoors, you don't need to be in close proximity to people very often. So we've just really
Right.
asked people to have a mask on you at all times. And then whenever you're going to be getting in those close proximities, please put them on. We'll remind you. And lots of hand washing, like,
Right.
lots of not letting the guests get into the food in any way, shape, or form anymore. So instead of buffets, we're kind of like serving everything now. But it's really, it actually worked out once we kind of got our systems down. It actually went really smooth. So we're,
Yeah. You guys
anticipating
are,
that all of this year is going to be the same.
yeah. And
So
we're lucky to be in the outdoor industry where at least people are seeking to get outdoors and,
Mhm.
grateful to be able to be there to provide some of these experiences and offer people the options and experiences to get outdoors and think differently about a trip this year that maybe they haven't before.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that cruise isn't happening or the international trip isn't happening. And look, before you know it, you're starting to explore all the amazing places that we have right here in the US and our
Mhm.
amazing wild places.
Yep.
So that's great. I'm glad you guys are there to facilitate that.
Oh yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate to be in the industry that we're in and to also live in a place that is, still has, maintained its destinationness. People wanted to come here to get out of their homes, to get away from kind of what life became last year. And so, I mean, there's another side to that because we were probably busier last fall than we wanted to be. We actually turned quite a bit of business away because we just were understaffed and we were all of a sudden like needing more people to handle everything because we couldn't put
Right.
very many people in a van, so we'd need 2 vans and 2 drivers where we used to only use one. So like just that, kind of taxed us a bit, but we figured a lot of things out and we know what we can do, so we're pretty good with that.
Yeah, I'm sure being a backcountry guide for, so many years has made you pretty good with adapting and
Yeah,
shifting, having to solve problems on the fly. uh,
very much so. Yeah.
yeah,
Not very much phases me anymore. So
yeah, I bet. So I'm so interested in like the early days of mountain biking in Moab, where now you go out there and you've got 170 millimeters of travel and you can bomb down all these trails.
Mhm.
But I'm watching some of these videos of people on hardtails dropping, big drops that I'm still scared of dropping. Uh, what
Mhm.
were the early days of mountain biking like in Moab? What were the trails like? What were they kind of established mountain bike trails, or were people showing up and just kind of riding everywhere? What was the scene like uh, for mountain biking and maybe like late 80s, early 90s?
So, so the Slick Rock Trail is really what put Moab on the map. And, it was developed by some local motorcycle enthusiasts. So, um, I guess 2019 was the 50th anniversary of the Slick Rock Trail. And locally, our county, helped create a really great film that is like, you can find it on YouTube. So I'll just put a plug. If you just like search for 50 years of Slick Rock, you can find that film, but it really goes through the history of it, quite well. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, it was developed as a motorcycle trail. And the what I know of is that some of the early mountain bikers who were coming from Marin County, California, that had heard about this ride out of Crested Butte over Pearl Pass would come out, and they'd always go by or through Moab. And they discovered um, in the like late 70s, early 80s, um, like this Slick Rock Trail, and really kind
Interesting.
of you know, started talking it up to,
Okay.
a very small community, the mountain bike world back then. So
Yeah, sure.
really, really started talking it up. And, as mountain biking became a real thing, um, some a good friend of mine was one of the people who started Mountain Bike Magazine. And their very first issue featured the Slick Rock Trail on their cover. So
Interesting.
I think it just represented this, like, so many people when they first come to Moab and ride there or ride some of the rocks, they're coming from places that are so different. It feels like you've arrived on a different planet. And I think just the visual, it's so beautiful and so stark and different looking that it captured the imagination of the early people into mountain biking. And it just made Moab kind of that first destination. Um, and people started coming here. And apart from the Slick Rock Trail, there was already just tons of these old Jeep routes, really mostly old mining roads from back in the uranium mining days of the Moab area. And people just started riding all these old roads, and some of them had become um, established Jeep trails because the four-wheel drive industry has had a place in Moab for a really long time. It's also a big destination for four-wheelers. And but the mountain bikes just started using those same routes, a lot of them. And and they found or kind of developed a couple little single track trails, but really honestly, when I arrived, the first time I came here was in 1989, and all those early years, almost all the riding we did were just on Jeep roads. And
Okay.
again, some of it's super technical and really burly, but
Yeah.
we really didn't have much in the way of single track, just
Okay.
like a couple short sections. Um, and so, and everyone was on fully rigid bikes. Like there was no suspension back then.
Rigid single speeds, I imagine, was most of them.
No,
Or-
there was definitely geared bikes. I mean, I've
Okay.
never been a single speeder myself. I mean, I know plenty of people who have gone through that phase. Usually it didn't last,
Yeah, it's a
terribly long.
phase.
Yeah. But I mean, I was a lot younger then, so that's a good thing. But really, that's all we had. So nobody thought about that, like this is just wrecking our bodies, or I mean, going down like Porcupine Rim on a rigid
Wow.
bike,
Yeah.
I still vividly remember when RockShox came out with their first fork. And we're talking that thing had maybe an inch of travel on it, like not very much.
Right.
But I borrowed a friend's fork, put it on my bike, and took it down Porcupine Rim. And it was like, this is a game changer. Oh my gosh, it's so much smoother than it was on the fully rigid bike. And it's just been on a trajectory since then. So we'll
Sure.
still get people that call and they're like, could we do this trip on a hardtail or on a rigid bike? And it's like, yeah, you can do it. We all did it for years, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you'll be a lot more comfortable on a full suspension bike.
Right. Yeah. What are you
And
seeking? Are you trying to
I'm
find
okay with
yourself on the?
asking. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
it's like you got to really want to do it. You're out there to find yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To each his own, but I'll also ask people, it's like, how old are you? Like if you're 30, and you want to ride a hardtail, go for it. But someone's like, oh, I'm, 50. I was like, believe me, like we're the same age. Just uh I would just say rent a full suspension bike if you don't have one,
Right.
because it's the great place to test them out.
And speaking of renting bikes, you guys facilitate all that. You kind of just get the information needed, what they prefer, and or does someone has to rent their own bike before taking a tour, or are both available options?
We have a full fleet of rental bikes. We've been working with Santa Cruz for over
Okay.
20 years. And we've, we can, help just about everybody that's
Awesome.
coming to us with a bike rental. Our day
Awesome.
tours are kind of set up to automatically include the bike. Just we've just kind of learned that most of that clientele is not showing up with their own bike. But
Got it.
on our multi-day trips, we just give people the option. It's like bring your own, or you can rent one of ours. So
Okay. That's amazing. So you show up with a bike, everything else is taken care of you. So basically you just need to plan when you want to go, which
mhm.
area you want to go, and then you could request that online. Uh, and then you guys take over from there, kind of help figure out, navigate how many,
Yeah,
what type of tour you're looking for and customize it a bit if needed.
yeah, exactly. And then we'll send you, your personal packing list of just the, personal gear you're gonna want to bring. Give you tips on, how to get here, where to stay, before and after, other things you might want to do while you're here. We really try to provide people with as much information that's helpful, for them to plan like, an awesome trip.
Okay, awesome. I see one thing, the specialty tours on your site. And I think one of those was the White Rim in a day. Is
Right.
that 100 miles of riding in a day? Is that
Um,
or is that a DIY that you guys provide the support?
so it can be any number of things. We can provide, there's riding the white rim in a day is a thing. And there's a couple ways of doing it. You can do the complete loop, which ends up being about 105, 110 miles, like if you start and end in the same place.
Okay.
And that would include like the whole off-road section plus a few miles of paved road and some really well graded dirt road. There's a lot of people will do what we call the rim to rim, which is like right where you drop in to the white rim on both sides.
Hmm.
Um, and so folks will come to us where they're like, well, I'd really like to have a guide ride this with me or with my group, because just in case something happens, we want someone like a professional there to help us with that. So we get that request. More often we get the request of, we want a certain level of support, someone to have extra water, carry some food, and also be there in case something catastrophic happens. And
Okay.
so we offer like a vehicle support scenario for folks as well. And some people want both, they
That's
want the
great to
guide on
know.
the trip plus the vehicle support. So,
Okay.
and really the vast majority of people doing it in one day are just doing it on their own.
Got
But
it.
we definitely get a certain amount, each year we'll get a few groups or individuals that want to do it on, want to do it in a day, but really want a little help along the way. So
Okay.
we just work with them to make sure that their needs are being met. And we've got a lot of, I mean, the fact is that when we bring our truck out there, we cannot drive as fast as the riders are riding because it's that rugged.
Yeah.
So you can cover the terrain quicker on a bike. So it's hard for us to follow someone and really give them support because they're going to have to keep waiting for the truck to catch up.
Right.
So what we'll do in those situations is we'll say, you guys start on one end and then we're going to meet you halfway. And so that way you can then get water, get food, whatever you need, and then you keep going and we'll follow you out to pick up any pieces that might need picking up and just meet you at the end. But that works actually really well for a lot of people. And we start them off on the side where you do have some cell service, so they could always call for help if they really needed. But then
Okay.
once you get to the other side, there's no cell service. You get into the canyons and there's nothing. So that's where I think everyone's a lot more comfortable having us out there with them for that part of it. So
Right. I'm sure there's plenty of kind of stories of people going in the middle of the white on the white rim trail, going in the middle of Canyonlands, and I'm sure you've got some of your own. Is there anything that sticks out in the early days when you maybe didn't have GPS or be able to call help, when you were far out, or uh,
um, oh
any
yeah, there's
challenging stories that stick out you like to share?
we've had a few incidences that were pretty interesting. Matt, my partner and I, we were working a trip together way back in the early 90s, and we actually got caught in a flash flood down in Lathrop Canyon, which is like this side canyon that goes down to the Colorado River. And there used to be campsites at the bottom. And so we were
Uh,
camping down there, and it rained during the night, and then it continued to rain that morning, and we kind of got everyone going. And the guests were all ahead of us on the trail. And as Matt was driving, and he was like, drove around like the road coming out of that canyon just kind of crisscrosses across the wash. And he kind of literally like crossed the wash and just was going to do a quick loop and then cross it again. And while he was up on that high ground, the water came through and just trapped him on the high
no.
ground in between, like river and then where he was. So he couldn't go
Wow.
anywhere. I was like on my bike on a section just behind him where I was out of sight of the wash. And so I missed seeing like the literally like wall of water coming down, but I came around the corner and also there's this river in front of me and I see Matt on the other side of it,
Oh,
perched, on this high ground with the truck. And I just had to wade through it and get over there. And we're like, now what do we do? Like, we've got all these people, we don't even know where they are. And so we hiked out, found everyone. Everyone was safe and fine. They had gotten up above everything before it happened. And we spent most of that day waiting for the river, for the water to come down, like so that
right.
we could actually drive out. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
It all turned out okay. You kind of just like, well before cell phones, there wasn't anyone we could call for help or anything.
Right.
And another time, kind of, a situation of note, we were on like night 2 of like a 3-night trip. So we were literally like near the halfway point of the whole trail. And I remember I think I was also working with Matt again on that trip. I'm not pretty positive. And Matt kind of gave this map talk overview, like pointed, because we were on this high place where you could see a lot, and kind of pointing over to where we were heading that morning, like we're going to ride over to that area and then do a little hike, and talking about showing on the map and stuff. And somehow 2 of our guests left camp and went the wrong way. Like they literally like hit the
They just took
road
off
and went
running.
left instead of right. And nobody saw them do this. And, we kind of let people go at their own pace and everything. So I was riding and followed the group, and we get to this like intersection where we had told everyone to wait, and everyone's there except these two guys. And we're like, oh, they must have gotten here and kept going out to the point that we're going out to. So we ride out there and they're not there. I'm
Oh,
like, well,
wow.
no, we ride back to the intersection. And luckily, someone comes driving through from the other way. And we're like, have you seen two riders? And they're like, no, we haven't seen anyone. So we're like, they must have gone the wrong direction. But we're
Right.
all like, but of course, they'll figure it out and turn around, and come back. And nope. Um, they, you know, the last thing that we told them was we're going to ride for 7.5 miles and then regroup and,
Okay.
to go out to this place called White Crack. And I guess they must have ridden about 30 miles until they ran into some other people and they said, where's White Crack? And the people looked at them, they're like, it's like 40 miles that way. And at that point they realized how much they'd messed up.
Sure.
And they didn't really know what to do, so they just kept going. And so meanwhile, we made the decision that I would take the truck and go back and find them, thinking that I'll find them within a couple miles, make sure they got
Sure.
food
Because
water.
then some point. Right.
I ended up having to drive all the way back around, and I finally caught them. They were like, they had retraced like 2 days of riding all the mileage we had done, and we're like past the point where we started when I finally caught up with them. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, get in. Like, we
We
still
did it
got a
out
long
and back.
time to go. And I had to go to the ranger station and beg for some gas because I'm like, I don't even have enough gas to do this. And that was like a crazy day. I mean, that one put some years on me. That was a pretty stressful,
I
just having
bet.
lost people. Like, we've, occasionally, despite all your best efforts, someone will take a wrong turn or, miss something or keep going or whatever it is. We've definitely had our share of that. I think
Sure.
any guide service in the world is going to have that at some point.
Well, we're out doing adventures, right? That's what makes it an adventure.
Right, exactly.
I
So
think for
that
those that don't fully appreciate how wild and how remote the Canyonlands National Park is, having been in there, even just driving in there is scary because if you break down, you're middle of nowhere, and
oh yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
having to backtrack and worry about these people, and then worry about gas for yourself. I can imagine the nerves and the stress that you went through that day.
Oh yeah, we've had our share of all of that.
Well, thank you for sharing those because I think all of us are always so impressed by the guides and like how much you guys have to put together. And I know you have years of experience, but during all these years, there's definitely uh, the stories that happen. I feel like that could
Hmm.
be a whole different podcast on guide
Oh yeah.
stories, but that's a different. Maybe that'll be a future podcast spin-off.
Oh, for sure. That would be a fun
So
one.
yeah, I bet. One thing I did want to ask you are the tours, the day tours? I imagine anyone can show up, whether they're a beginner, intermediate, advanced rider. Is that the case? Can you take kind of everybody out if somebody's listening to this and feeling inspired to go explore or take a tour because they're not that familiar? Who's it best suited for?
It is suited for everyone. We have tours that are really geared as introductory or for people that have very little or no experience mountain biking, up through, like I mentioned, the whole enchilada, like extremely advanced, riding. And we've got
Okay,
some great guides who can help someone through like all of that and everything in between. So,
that's great to
we
know.
just really, work hard to get you on the right ride that's appropriate for your experience level and what level of challenge you want, in your day out.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome. So it's good to know that this is not just for the extreme mountain biker. So if you're listening to this, planning a trip to Moab. I personally know there's plenty of, and I think Moab's done an incredible job of developing these beginner and intermediate trails over the
mhm.
past years. Dead Horse State Park, Klondike Bluffs, Clonzo have
Oh,
enough
yeah.
riding for a beginner to never get bored and learn a lot
Yep.
about mountain biking. And
Yeah.
speaking of learning a lot, one thing I love that you're offering is your instructional tour. So,
Mhm.
can you tell us a bit more about what's involved in that? I imagine uh, that you're not only taking a backcountry tour and adventure, but you're also improving your mountain biking skills.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that we get more of a demand for that from people who don't have much experience, but we also get folks that are, pretty solid riders that are really looking to either work on specific skills or just want to, bump their comfort level up a little bit and be able to handle
Sure.
some training they haven't done in the past. So our focus on the instructional tours is that it is still a tour and we are going for a ride. We
Hmm.
really don't offer the type of instruction where all you're going to do is hang out in a park or a parking lot and just really work on those, you know, basic skills or even like advanced skills that you aren't actually applying on the trail. So
Got
we'll
it.
do some of that in the parking lot and then but we're always going to hit the trail and then actually try to work on, put into practice some of the stuff we've been working on, for the first part of the day.
Oh, that's super
So
cool.
yeah, and it's so much fun to get people out there to have them ride things for the first time or do things that they didn't think they could,
Hmm.
um, coming into it. And I mean, I'll even say for myself, I mean, I've been riding for a very long time, but a lot of my guides and other friends of mine are such good instructors that I'm riding things all the time now that I've never ridden before. Like
Yeah.
there's features on some of our trails that I've walked for years and have only just ridden for the first time in the last 6 months. So I see it as something that everyone can continue to, enhance and increase your skill level and learn to do things that you maybe never thought possible. So,
I agree 100% with that. We just did a mountain biking skills course. I've been riding for, I don't know, 18 years now and mountain biking, but I've been doing things wrong for 18 years as well that I didn't realize. So there's a lot of old bad habits that I needed to break. And just a couple of tips. We took it in Sedona through Sedona Mountain Biking Academy. And,
uh-huh.
after a 3 hour session, I improved so much after just that one day. And I still
Yeah.
catch myself doing things incorrectly and I'll fix it on the trail. And it makes a huge difference right off the bat.
Yep.
And I know there's so much more when it comes to if you're willing to constantly invest in your skill. There's features that you're walking that I feel like it made mountain biking fun all over again for me because when I see a challenge, instead of just automatically thinking that I'm going to walk it, um,
Hmm.
I attempt things and try to implement some of the things that I've learned. And throwing on some pads and trying things is making mountain biking continue to make mountain biking fun
Hmm.
um, all the time.
Well, I have many more years of bad habits to break than you do.
We all do. We all do. Well, yeah, maybe, but I'm sure you got many good years of great skills that you picked up too, so you're crushing
Oh yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I like to see improvement in myself. So it's
Yeah,
great. It definitely
well, it
keeps
keeps
my
us going.
Mhm.
I will ask you and leave you with this. Maybe the last thing is, there's a huge increase in outdoor recreation in general, and a lot of people visiting Moab, and a lot of people visiting a lot of the outdoor recreation areas like Sedona and maybe other places they have an option to choose from a lot of different adventures that get thrown up. Popular things to do: Jeep
Yep.
tours, ATVs, 4x4s. And, we don't do anything that is motorized. So we only do human powered adventures. And we personally absolutely love mountain biking. But I wanted to ask you what what are some of the things that you absolutely love about mountain biking that you'd encourage people to try uh, if maybe instead of a ATV tour or instead of another one of these motorized fossil fuel burning trips, maybe they do that too, but try mountain biking. What are
Mhm.
some things that you absolutely love about mountain biking? What keeps you going year after year that might inspire others to want to either try it or keep growing or taking one of the tours?
Um, I guess what I would say that maybe a lot of people can relate to is that a lot of us can still remember when we were little kids and you first started riding a bike. And there's a certain amount of like freedom that that gives you. And uh, like, I don't know, it's the like wind in your hair and just like moving at a higher rate of speed than if you're walking. And this is like nothing bad on hiking or walking. I love to do that. But there's something about riding a bike that is really exhilarating. And it's also an amazing mode of travel to both cover some ground, but also pull in your surroundings with all your senses and in a way that you can't do in a car or on a motorized piece of equipment because there's the noise factor and other things that just kind of get in that way. So you're really enjoying the natural world. Um, yes, at a slightly higher rate of speed, but in a way that allows you to see more of it. And so, in our tours, if you come in the spring, you're going to see flowers on the side of the trail and we might stop and get down and smell them because they're so amazing. Or, we oftentimes see some wildlife. And I mean, you just get out there and you get to experience like our ecosystem here, which is the desert and is fairly foreign to a lot of people, but in a way that I just think is like a fantastic experience. And, irregardless of the technical challenge of the trail, which you may be into or you may not be, you can still get out and ride a mountain bike and connect with the earth in a way that I think is just, it's important. It's just really, we spend too much time on pavement and in buildings and not enough time outside. So that's, there it is. That's my,
That's a great
yeah.
message, and I couldn't have said it better. I truly appreciate your time today and coming on the show, Kirsten. And I hope that everyone is feeling encouraged to get out, take one of your day tours or a multi-day adventure. And I'm super pumped to try one of them myself. And
Awesome.
what a special place that you guys are based out of with the Red Rocks and the La Salle Mountains in the background. It never gets old. We absolutely love visiting Moab, and we can't
Mhm.
wait to come see you.
Well, I can't wait to meet you in person when you get up here. Or if I'm down in your neck of the woods, I will definitely look you up as well.
All right, awesome.